Flam fam to this episode of Fired Up. I am your hostess, Susan.
With the mostest.
With the mostest. And I am here with my compadre, Michael Renell.
Hola.
Hola. You're learning.
I gotta, this is a big deal. I have to figure out how to learn this. It is as much as my 8-year-old daughter tells me that it's better for her to learn Chinese than Spanish in school, which I don't understand, but
wild.
that's what she's convinced me of.
That's hard. That's hard.
Yeah.
¿Cómo estás, Miguel?
Bien. Et tú?
Muy bien, gracias.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Well, I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, we have a cool topic here, and
kind of controversial.
Yeah, and it's a big topic, so we always have some fun chit chat. We can do that while we're doing it, but let's jump right in.
Yeah, let's jump right in. Let's do that because there's a lot to talk about. And so I'll just start off by saying that I know you and I have talked about this for quite some time. We've kind of tiptoed around this topic. And quite frankly, it's been quite the argument for the past few years. So what we are going to talk about today is BDC efficiency. However, we're not going to talk about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whether you agree with having it or you don't agree with having it. We're very well aware that Alan was actually opposed to having a BDC, thought that it handicapped a salesperson. But Michael, you and I have been traveling quite a bit, and the facts are facts. A lot of dealerships rely on BDCs today, and there's a need for help and training.
Yeah.
And that's just, we've been asked how often do we get a lead? How often do we get somebody from a BDC reaching out to us?
Oh, at least once a week. And it's interesting because it's not that, we don't believe that BDCs are good or bad or anything. Like Susan said, it's part of the business. It's a reality, and they are a part of the lead, and we are a lead to show company. So we think it's important that BDCs run efficient and they run well if you have them. So if you have them, let us help you let them run better. The fact is that most BDCs probably don't need to exist. If you took that time and effort, just like Alan taught, and put it into your sales staff, you wouldn't need a BDC because you're not running your BDC the right way. BDCs need to be run the right way and speak to the right customers. You need to understand, right, the good and the bad with it all. But there are 3 key areas that we've talked about recently and that we want to emphasize and dig into today, right? It's what's the process flow, right? Are we communicating? Are we in sync with each other? And then something Susan's really been focused on the training side, and I think it's so important, is cross-functionality. Does the sales staff know what it's like to be in the seat of a BDC rep? And does a BDC rep know what it's like to sit in that seat? I was lucky enough working at a dealership. I got to sit in both seats, right? I got to sit in the desk of a salesperson, sit as a BDC person. I got to be a desk manager. I got to run BDCs. I got to see both sides, and I understand the business in such a different way. You're right, Susan. It's so important.
It is. It's very important. And so again, we're not going to discuss whether you're better off with one or without. We're a little past that, aren't we?
Yeah, we are, because dealerships know what's best for them. If they don't, there's a lot of BDC consultants that will help you and guide you and how to build and structure that BDC. And then we'll come in and teach you how to run it real efficient.
Oh, yeah.
And run it well, and how to convert that customer the right way. But this is, how are we going to run this BDC efficient? How are we going to run it well as a tool to help the sales floor be more successful? That's the job.
That's their job. That's their job. So you said it. I'm going to recap real quick. Number 1, mistake is not having a documented process or process flow. Number 2 is lack of communication or synchronicity. And then the third is lack of training and training, cross training, right? So making sure that they're cross functional. So let's talk about the first one. So documentation. So do you remember the day that we were training up in Savannah? And we were with some really great people. I love that group.
Well, and they have it's interesting because in that part of that group, one part of that group has a centralized BDC and one part of that group has individual BDCs in each store. And in their Savannah area, that's how it is.
Yeah.
And they're fun.
It's a big group spread across many states, and they're very successful and growing actually right now. We've partnered with them, and they knew that they needed some help and they wanted to fine tune some things. And so, in doing that, we get in front of every single person in the dealership, from management, from the top to the guys that are answering the BDC departments. We're sitting in front of them. And we had sort of an epiphany one day in class, didn't we?
Yeah, we kind of uncovered something.
Yeah. Yeah. In discussing certain challenges that take place sometimes with calls and with leads and prospect and follow up, I asked to see what their process was for answering a call. So, call comes in. I need to know exactly what to do with it if I'm a BDC, right? What's expected of me on that call? What do I say? What do I document? And at what point do I hand it off? What's done after that, from CRM notes to, everything, right?
Every step of the
maybe
process.
No shows,
what point do I hand this
right?
over to the sales floor? Do I confirm appointments? Do managers confirm appointments? Every single step of the process.
All of those little
Someone needs to know what they're doing before they touch that phone or answer that lead.
And so I asked to see this process. I kind of inquired about it, and I kind of got deer in headlights. What's interesting is that this is not unusual. Okay. So I'm not bringing this up because, I'm picking on these guys. I'm bringing this up because this is something that Michael and I see often, with very successful groups. And I think it's just traditionally, we've always sort of, especially being there in person, we've always relied on verbal delegation, I guess, verbal direction.
And a process, right? How many dealerships do we go to, or how many have you worked in, for those of you listening, where the philosophy and the process is we don't always do what we always do.
That's true too. That's
right.
True.
And it needs to be, we always do what we always do. And the processes break down because it's like, well, in this special instance, it's okay. And in this one-off instance, it's okay. And, oh, it's Mrs. Smith. We always do it this way with Mrs. Smith. And Javier, it's okay. Javier can sell cars the way Javier wants. And Anne does it her way. She's so successful doing it her way. I let Anne do her thing. It can't be that way. We need to always do what we always do. And that's what makes processes so important, because it allows a manager to, when there is pushback from the sales staff, to go, this is the process. This is the process we follow every time. I don't care, without exception. This is what it is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Live with it.
And let me ask you something, okay? Is there one set of rules, whether it's a process or a script or a word track, that works with 100% of scenarios?
No, but it needs to work with 80% of the scenarios.
Exactly.
Sure, 20% of the time, some things might go a little different. But then if you start seeing a pattern of the same different thing happening over and over again, well, then you need a process for it. And I'll use an example of just recently, right? Over the last 2 years, how many dealerships out there have all of a sudden seen themselves become an out-of-state dealership? Every single customer you're selling to, or most of the customers you're selling to, are coming from zip codes outside of your state.
How much to ship? Yep.
Right. So now we've never done that. Yeah, every once in a while, 1 or 2 or 3 a month, we'd sell an out-of-state car, but not that often. Okay. especially if you don't live near a state border. But if you live in a state border, maybe you do it all the time. But now you're doing it a lot. So you didn't have a process before when it was once or twice a month, but now you're doing it 7, 8, 10, 20, 30, 40 times a month. There needs to be a process around that, and it needs to be built. So again, the only times we're not following a process or we're not always doing what we're always doing is in that very rare
Those
10%.
exceptions and I'm so glad you mentioned that too, because in our management minute, if you're a manager listening, I would definitely catch that if you work in a BDC model dealership. But
Yeah, I'll tell you,
even
Susan
if you
does a
do
great job.
have a documented process, when was the last time? Well, first of all, do you know, if you do or not, this gentleman that was in this class, they very well might have one at that dealership. Okay. But does he know about it? That's another thing. Is it reviewed?
And wait, I just want to say, Susan, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
If he doesn't know about it, it's not his fault.
Right. Right.
There needs to be his boss, the GM, the owner, whoever their boss is, needs to make sure that everyone understands the process and that you're inspecting what you expect out of that process.
Exactly.
So, sorry.
Exactly. But it
Sorry.
should still be reviewed frequently because, as you said, you know, say that you're still following a process from 3 years ago. Okay, well, it may not seem like too long ago, but 3 years ago, the face of the business was completely different. The way that people shopped for cars was completely different pre-COVID. And so you've got to be looking at that process every quarter. Every quarter, if you're a manager, you need to be looking at that making changes. Yeah, if you're selling out of state, then make sure that you've got a process for that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Yeah, but you know, it's crazy. And I think this is most dealerships, I hate to say, that, you know, you could have an awesome team with super talented people, but if you don't have a process or processes that you're following with consistency, you just can't scale, and you can't have a recession proof dealership like that.
Yeah. And you won't be able to develop your staff because you're going to be spending so much time, just dealing with different things with every car deal. And it can't be that way. 80 to 90% of car deals need to follow the same exact process every single time. 100% of the time would be amazing. But I've worked in dealerships long enough to know if we can get 80, 90% of the time, we're going to solve a lot of our problems.
Like a
And that also, what?
Like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. And sometimes we need to take that honest look in the mirror, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times Susan and I go into dealerships and we launch a dealership and it's like, yeah, we do this and we do that. And we do goal setting meetings with our teams every single month. We sit with them and tell them what we need to do. And yeah, we also, we're asking about the trade on every deal. And, and we have a process for this and process for that. And then 6 months later, we're sitting with the managers again after spending 6 months with the sales team. And, you got a lot of smoke.
Yeah.
And it's great. You can blow smoke at Susan and I all day long. The only person you're hurting, the only person you're fooling is yourself. And that's where that honest look in the mirror understands, hey, what am I doing wrong? And what can I do better as a boss to help us get better? Because creating that process flow fixes BDC sales problems. BDC sales problems, like customer makes an appointment. I schedule an appointment with a salesperson, Susan. Don't worry, Michael, you're going to see Susan when she comes in. You're going to have a great experience with Susan. Go see Susan. I arrive to go see Susan. Guess what? Susan's busy with another customer. Now I stand around shaking my head. But if that process said, hey, go see Eric, my manager, Eric's going to make sure to take care of you. And that BDC agent has a schedule there. And they know at 2:00 on Tuesday when they scheduled that time, Eric and Deborah, the two managers there. And I know I've already sent 3 people to Deborah. So now I'm going to send someone else to Eric. And don't worry. Or I can say Eric and Deborah are going to be there to take care of you. It doesn't matter. It needs to know where the process is. And when the customer arrives, that person is free and available to work with them.
There shouldn't be any hiccups, any questions, any bumps, nothing, because the customer feels it the most. The most.
Yep. And when you start telling the customer that I don't know, I'm sorry, it's just, this is what happens. I'm on the phone. I'm an agent. I can't tell you what happens in the dealership. They don't want to hear your problems.
Forget it. You're going to lose trust. You're going to lose credibility. You're going to have someone walking out. You're going to lose, if you do make a deal, it might not be as good of a deal as you want it to be. So, yeah, I mean, all of these things, forget about you being annoyed by, the little hiccups. Imagine what your customer goes through.
Exactly.
So,
And so remember, the bottom line here is no one answers a lead. No one answers a phone call unless they know what the process is. And then that process is being followed
100%.
and inspected what you
100%.
expect from you.
Yep.
And if you could do those things, then someone can get on a phone and be successful. But without it, we end up with broken processes and broken customer
Inefficiency.
experience. Yep.
All right. Well, gosh, we can talk for a while longer about that. But let's move on to our second mistake that we see dealerships that have the BDC model make. So this one is huge, and this is a lack of communication and synchronicity between the two departments. Alan has a couple of modules that he's done, a couple of videos that he's done on this. This is probably the most obvious of the mistakes, right? But what happens, Michael, when there is a lack of communication between the two? And listen, keep in mind that this occurs when you've got two different departments under one rooftop. So this occurs when you've got, the sales floor, and then you got a BDC department right off to the side. Sometimes they're right next door, whatever the case is, right? This occurs even when that's the scenario.
Right.
Now imagine when your BDC is not in-house. Imagine how many more opportunities for, miscommunication there are. So let's unpack that for a little bit.
Yeah, and this is the key to everything. When I was running the BDCs, I made sure every single day, multiple times a day, the managers and I were speaking. How can the BDC help support you more? How can we help this? What problems are happening? Where do we have hiccups, bumps? What salespeople are problems who aren't working with the BDC? What are the ones who are working well with the BDC? What BDC agents are doing well bringing in appointments? Which ones are bringing in not, you want BDCs to bring in good customers. Sometimes they bring in bad customers who shouldn't be brought in the door. And guess what? BDC agents know that. They set up a customer the right way. If a customer's set up the right way, they're going to have a good experience. If they're not set up, those are the things that you need to know as a manager. And that's what they need. Because remember one thing about a BDC, it's the scapegoat of a dealership's problems. If you are a sales manager and you're having trouble with floor traffic, blame the BDC.
Blame the BDC.
If you're a CD BDC sales manager, you're not getting enough trades, blame the BDC.
They're not
if
setting
you're not getting enough
appointments.
sales, blame. Right, Susan? You watched it. You lived it. The BDC is the scapegoat for everything. And it's easy to blame the BDC because you don't know what's going on behind that door as a manager. I don't know, especially if the BDC is not in the dealership. I don't even know what's happening there. I don't know what they do there all day. They're just running around doing nothing.
That's tough. And it's not easy just creating a phone room, it's not, if you decide and you transition into that model, it's tough. Let me tell you, we tried to convert. I remember when I was at the dealership and we started a BDC with one person, we stuck her in the conference room. We had nowhere else.
Right. What did someone once, or actually multiple people have said this before, but like they've said, when dealerships wanted to create an internet department, they're like, do you know how to type? Yes. Okay, go sit in that computer.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I mean, okay, great. You're doing this. I'm paying someone to answer these leads. I'm paying multiple people to answer the phones and answer the leads. But if I'm not using them as the support staff to help make the sales floor more successful, then it's a waste. Then don't do it. Then give everything back to the sales floor. Sales managers, you need to be involved in that BDC every day. You need to know what they're saying. You need to know what they're doing, and they need to know what they're handling, because those are your opportunities that are going to make the difference between hitting the manufacturer number and blowing past the manufacturer.
Oh, completely. And even just a huddle each morning with the shift that's on. I remember a dealership a year ago that had an outsourced BDC. And this was outsourced. So this is the third example. So you might have a BDC that's in BDC agents that are in your dealership, or you could have your own company's BDC agents that are in a different office in a different location. But imagine even having an outsourced BDC where
Right.
you're
A
relying on
third
a different
party.
company, right? But
Right.
they knew that that would create miscommunication. And so what they did was they had a huddle every single morning, and it was only like 15 minutes. It wasn't it doesn't take that long, but they were able to, and if it was obviously anything further that had to be discussed, and they took it offline. But I don't even think, I think there might be dealerships that go months without communicating with each other or seeing each other, or at least having any sort of conversation outside of the lead, right?
Right. And it's so true. And they don't even talk about the lead, because all they're doing, it's not like they're saying, hey, you guys handled these 4 leads really well, thank you so much. It's one-off lead where the customer came in on a car that wasn't there, and the car was just sold 4 hours earlier. There's no way the BDC agent, third party in another office anywhere would have known that car was sale. And that's what they're going to harp on.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going to tell the boss why it ruined their day and why everything didn't work, because the BDC brought in this one customer on a car they didn't have, and the sales floor couldn't do their job and move the customer to another car and sell them. Mm-hmm. So we have to remember that, like, if you're not going to work with BDCs, if we're going to scapegoat BDCs, excuse me, I'm sorry, those communication is the key to everything.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially when you are celebrating those successes.
Right.
So a lot of times they get left out of that. A lot of times it's the sales department that celebrates that stuff, and the BDC gets treated as operators,
And the BDC needs to be treated as part of the dealership.
Exactly. They're part of the recipe.
And guess what? Training to that helps.
Yeah. So that leads us into our third mistake that people make whenever dealing with a BDC model dealership, and that's lack of training, period. Okay. But training together, cross training, and making sure that your associates on both sides are cross functional. What do we mean by that, Michael?
So I saw this great example of it at a dealer group where the sales staff was required to spend an hour a day in the BDC making phone calls. Okay. And it wasn't just, hey, go into the BDC and make some phone calls. And it was like, when I heard this and saw this, I was like, wow, I wish I thought about that when I was running BDCs, because it's so genius. Because what it forced the sales team to do is to see and feel what it's like to make, not that this in an hour, a salesperson was making that 175 to 125 phone calls a day, but in that hour, maybe they were making 10, 15, 20 phone calls, 30 phone calls, depending on how many people they were touching. And they were able to see what it's like to go through that, what it's like to sit in that room. And what really set it apart was the BDC director for that room, the BDC manager, would help train the sales staff on the scripting. So everyone was on the same page. So when a salesperson came in there and was doing one of those, oh, well, hey, just in case we got disconnected, can I have your phone number? And doing, well, we pay 10% over book on trade, or whatever nonsense is coming out of a salesperson's mouth that's not scripted and not part of the game plan for the team. That BDC manager was able to say, hey, no, let's get back to the script. Here's a workbook. Let's get you back to what you need. Read the script. Let me help you. Let's ring. And she would do it. And the sales team was better for it, because then you saw the sales team going, hey, guess what? I was with a customer just now in person in the showroom, and I hooked the trade on them. It worked. Thanks so much for teaching me everything. High five. And that's what was going on. And it just brought a synergy and a connection and understanding of that the BDC's job is to help make the sales team successful, not try to jam them up, not try to do anything else other than say, you're not good at this. We're good at this. Let us run with it.
That's right. That's right. And Alan tried to promote that process. He had a name. He had a name for it. And it was called having CBD in your dealership, right? And it's
Wait,
not the
so
CBD.
Alan was like the foreteller, like of CBD today.
Yeah.
Like he
He
should
knew
have been
about the
an
CBD.
early investor in that, and
Yeah.
this company would be different.
Yeah. He hyped it up before everyone else did. Hyped CBD before everyone else did.
What's it called? I even wonder. I was thinking about that a couple weeks ago. Like, was CBD around back then? Like, would he even
Oh,
known
I
and
think
made the connection
so. I think so.
when he
This
came up with
wasn't
the
that long
term?
ago. I'm not sure, but I love it. You know, every time we go and we're like, all right, let's talk about CBD. Everyone,
Right, I know. It just has a whole
all
different
right,
meaning
let's
today. I
talk about
wonder.
CBD. And I'm like, it's not what you're thinking.
Right.
So CBD stands for having a culture of business development. So this is exactly what Michael's talking about. Having your sales staff, right, who's used to just coming in and getting in between a transaction, right? Who's just
Yep.
used to walking in and being fed a lead, right? Teaching these people how to cultivate and generate just like your BDC does,
Right.
and teaching them those
Exactly.
skills that the BDC does by having them go in there, rotate in there every day, giving them the time. Now, this works really well with the managed floor, you know, when you've got guys that have their time on the front point, when, you know, they have their time with the phone room, etc. Maybe you've got them rotating in the service drive, you know.
Yep.
But this is the ideal model if you do have a BDC, right? Is have them spend time in there. But at the same time, have the BDC pull the BDC out from that office, especially if there's no windows in there. God forbid there's no windows wherever they are. More than likely there aren't. Okay. Pull them out of there and have them spend at least a couple of hours on the floor. Have them sit with one client of theirs from beginning to end, or from handoff to
Yeah.
delivery, just to see
They're
what the experience is, so that they
exactly.
know what success looks like.
They need to respect each other's jobs.
That's right.
The bottom line is there needs to respect each other's jobs.
Mhm.
I'll never forget being in a dealership once, and a manager said, you know, he just said, what are the BDC managers? It's $25 they make. You know how much money I make on a commission? How horrible that is to hear.
Wow.
You know what I mean? No, you didn't make that money on a commission. Not over the last 2 years. You definitely didn't. But that BDC agent helped you. They set that customer up. They brought down their guard. They set that customer up and built trust with them so you can run with it. They are as much as part of that commission as the salesperson was. Because think about it, Susan. How long can a BDC agent, you know, making phone calls, doing the research on a customer, could you say maybe an hour and a half I would spend to get a customer in the door as a BDC agent? That's a fair number, fair amount of time, would you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when a salesperson's selling car in a dealership, forget about the time in F&I, forget about all of that prep time of getting the car ready for delivery and all that. I'm talking from the time the customer walks in the door to we have a deal, shake hands, you're going to go to F&I in a little bit. Hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
who
it's
did
an equal
more? Who
effort.
did more and
Listen,
who did less?
the fact is the fact. If you rely on a BDC, then your livelihood depends on the BDC, and you wouldn't be able to sell cars without them.
And depends on you working with them. I'll never forget when I was running the stores. I was walking through one of our dealerships one day, and a bunch of the sales staff comes over to me, and they're like, Michael, it's not fair. It's not fair. Eric and John Bahami and Debbie are getting they're getting all the leads from the BDC. They're giving them all the customers. It's not fair. It's not fair. I said, okay, let me go see what's going on. So I go walk in the back. And yes, it always should be fair. It should have some sort of proper rotation. But this is what I got from the BDC agents when I went in the back. I go, hey guys, everyone on the floor is crying that Eric and John Bahami and Debbie are getting all the leads from this department, all the good customers and the good appointments. They said, yeah, we are doing that. I said, oh, really? Why? They said, because they're closing our customers. They come in here every morning and say good morning to us and hi to us. They treat us with respect. They don't blow off our customers. And every once in a while, they buy us lunch.
How about that?
How about that?
How about that?
How about that? How about a little
Mm.
respect goes a long way?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
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 It's so important. We all work together. We're all making money together. And the sales floor, the reality is, listen, I've met $100,000 BDC agents. They exist, but
Oh
they're more rare.
yeah.
But they're more rare than common, and more common than rare are $100,000 salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact is yeah, the pay is not fair, but it's up to salespeople to show their appreciation.
And the fact remains that you're relying on that. Listen, there's a group of people that you depend on to make that experience magical, right?
Yep.
BDC, your porters, even, God,
Yep.
let's take care of the people that are part of our team. And yeah, BDC is definitely such a valuable piece to that. So
Yeah.
well, we could carry on. We could carry
We
on
could
for
go
another
on, but I
hour.
think, you know what?
Yeah.
There's a couple BDC people that I would love to do like a little group with between one time. So
I know
Susan
who
and I are going to work on
about.
getting a couple BDC people. If you want to join us on this and be a part of this BDC conversation, I don't want to have the debate, BDC, good, bad, ugly.
Yeah.
I just want to have the conversation of how do we make your BDC
Mhm.
better, more efficient, and understand that it is a tool for success in the sales floor. We'd love to have you come join us on the podcast. So just reach out to us at michael@alanram.com or susan@alanram.com.
And we'll try to round up some people. I have someone in mind. I know we've been talking about
all right, cool.
certain redhead that we know in the Southeast. So a certain sassy redhead.
Yeah.
And it's not me.
No,
believe it or not.
You're the California version.
Yeah, she's got the other region. She's got that covered.
Exactly.
But yeah, thank you. It was good to see you again.
It was good seeing you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We appreciate it. We're getting more and more listeners all the time. It's kind of fun. So if you have ideas, topics, things you'd like us to talk about, just email either of us. We're always around. Michael and Ellen Ram, or Susan and
we're out there somewhere.
We're out there. So just let us know what you need. Thank you so much for listening. And Susan, I'll see you soon.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Bye, Ram
All right.
Fam.